This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
This table is really tilted.
Excuse me? Am I gonna get a chance to speak?
Maybe I should take that back.
Denied. Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Take a giant step for mankind.
Welcome to the Tilted Table with your hosts, Sean and Joe.
Borderline rapist. That's bad.
So good.
All right, folks. Welcome to another episode of the Tilted Table, the internet's answer to a question that no one asked. I am Sean Landon Clark.
And I am Joey Joe, the Fracky Mac.
Yes, and we're at episode 20. Look at that. We've been doing this for 20 weeks.
That's pretty fantastic.
It doesn't feel like 20 weeks.
I'm proud of us.
Yeah.
And we have a handful of listeners.
We do have a handful of listeners, and I think that's actually literally the number that we have. It's like a handful.
Well, and a big shout out to Brandon for listening to Sean and my nonsense. It was fun getting to talk to him in person the other night, and the fact that I hadn't seen him in months and months, and the first thing he says is, "I can't believe you guys got a strike on YouTube."
It's awesome.
And I had to actually remember, like, wait, how does he know that? I haven't told him that.
Sweet.
So,
wow, man, that's awesome. Well,
yeah.
Thanks, Brandon. Maybe one day I'll meet you.
Mm-hmm. He's a cool dude.
Oh, cool. I'm just not a random voice that appears over the internet, right? It's interesting because I was telling you earlier that our downloads for Buzzsprouts hover about 500, I think, total. So we do have listeners. I don't know where they're coming from. I haven't gotten any kind of correspondence from people, but I assume that as the numbers grow, somebody's eventually going to send us an email, and I don't know, or some kind of message. I don't know what they would say to us. They, I'm assuming they would say, "Oh, hey, I like you guys." They may say something critical. I would like people to say, like, "I don't like this" or "I like that." That would be awesome. It's always helpful.
Have your own trolls.
Yeah, I guess. I would like to think of it as constructive criticism, but I'm fine with trolls too. I mean, I got the thickest skin on the planet. You can tell me I suck fucking balls, and I couldn't care less.
You've got a backpack flamethrower for the wars that are going to start.
Oh, yeah. I don't get into that stuff. I'm not a big troll chaser. If somebody wants to come after me and say crazy shit, unless they say something like outright insane, like I did something, or, I might respond to that. But typically I won't respond to shit like that. It's just no point. A waste of time.
Well, you've got a good sense of humor and some pretty acidic comebacks at times. I think one of the things that people don't know about you is how quick your wit is. And if they were to get into some type of a flamethrower, you'd bring a Sherman tank to a fist fight.
I can sometimes. Some days are better than others, but yeah, I'm pretty good with that kind of interaction. I can handle myself for the most part.
Well, I'm excited about today's episode, and how did you? I know we do some planning as far as like the subject matter and what we're going to talk about on these things, but today's idea I thought was pretty clever. How'd you come up with that one?
I don't know. I think I may have been thinking about a particular film and then thinking, like, this movie is so bad, but how could it be so bad? It has two comedic geniuses at the top of their game at the time this movie was made, and this movie was absolutely horrible. And I thought, well, that might be a good podcast subject, is that we can talk about, movies that flopped, but specifically movies that have more than one iconic actor in it, or actors that were at the top of their game when the movie was made. It has to have more than one. There's a lot of flops with, a great actor, but when you have more than one great actor and it just bombs, that's to me, I thought, well, that'd be a good subject to screw with. So
no, I'm excited, man.
Yeah.
So my curiosity was definitely piqued because the one that you were referencing, you haven't even told me what this movie was.
Yeah.
Was it a comedy?
Yes. Do you want me to start?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, I'll start with this one. It's a movie called Envy.
Never heard of it.
No one has. That's the thing that's baffling about this. It came out in 2004. It stars Ben Stiller and Jack Black. And at the top of their game. So this is, Ben Stiller when he was doing, just film after film that were just all bangers, and most of his movies are really, really funny. Some of them, to me, are some of the most classic comedies that were made in the late 90s into the early 2000s. Of course, Jack Black with the School of Rock, and he was at the top of his game. And they do this movie called Envy. And the plot of the film, again, I have to go kind of by memory, but essentially Ben Stiller plays the straight guy. Jack Black plays, the more the loose, Jack Blacky guy, right?
Okay.
So they both work for 3M. I think it's a paper company or whatever it is, right? So the plot of the film is that Ben Stiller's character is the more straight-laced, you become successful by working hard and climbing the ladder and doing all these kind of things. Jack Black's character is this guy that always has these crazy ideas for inventions and get-rich-quick schemes. And he comes up with this idea for something called a vaporizer, which disintegrates like dog shit and things like that.
Okay.
And he offers Ben Stiller this, opportunity to get in on this another get-rich-quick scheme that this guy's been doing this, everything's been a failure. And they live next door to each other, by the way. So, of course, Ben Stiller tells him, hey, man, you got to stop with all these, daydreaming and bullshit and, work hard. So he creates this vaporizer and becomes filthy rich off of it. And Ben Stiller's character, of course, gets envious that, his best friend and neighbor is now a success. And it goes from there where he tries to, he runs into Christopher Walken. So Christopher Walken's in this movie. And at some point, he runs into Christopher Walken, who plays this really eccentric, weird drifter kind of guy. And they decide to kill. I don't think they decide to kill. I think they get drunk, and he ends up killing Jack Black's horse, this prize horse that Jack Black bought. And yeah, and then it just goes from there, and it's not
all
funny.
of this sounds terrible.
It's a fucking horrible film.
Do you, when you were doing your legwork as far as a movie that bombed, do you know how much money it lost?
I don't. I didn't look up those specifics. I'll tell you how I even found out about the film. I think it's an interesting story. So this goes back to Blockbuster still existing.
Ooh.
And,
Blockbuster.
So I must have saw it shortly after it came out. So this would have been 2005-ish or 2006 maybe. And so I saw it, and it was like Ben Stiller, Jack Black, Envy, and I'm like, whoa, I've never even heard of this film. And I'm a big Jack Black fan. School of Rock is still, I think, one of the greatest films ever made. That's a whole nother subject. A lot of people might disagree with that, but I really like that film. Ben Stiller, Tropic Thunder, to me, top
classic.
tier comedy. But you know how they have on the box, like the critics, all the positive
Rotten Tomatoes and all that kind of stuff?
Well, no, just like on the box of a movie, I'll have like some kind of comment from a movie reviewer, and it's usually real positive, like the funniest thing I've ever seen, that kind of thing.
Right.
The one that was prominent on the box was a really good comedy. And I'm like, that's the best you got.
Oh, wow.
Right?
And they were probably reaching to come up with that one, like, quote.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's like, if you, like your mama said, and if you can't say something nice, don't say something.
So yeah, I rented it, and I'm like, how bad? It can't be that bad. Mm-hmm. No, it's that bad. It's an absolutely fucking terrible film. I don't know how Ben Stiller and Jack Black did this movie and walked away. And I would assume that halfway through they would have said this is terrible and quit while they were ahead. So I'm surprised this thing even got made. But it's a bad film.
I won't watch it, so we're all good.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to go watch any of these movies. I wouldn't recommend watching any of these films that I'm going to talk about.
Well, so it leads me to my very first one. Mine was actually pretty easy. So the year was 2000 that this movie came out, and Edwards Cinemas had just opened their new theater. So it was like, sparkly. They're doing lots of promo events, big screen, Dolby Pro Logic, like all of the cool stuff. And we were given, me and my buddy Dave were given free movie tickets to this film starring John Travolta and Forrest Whitaker. And
okay.
I was like, well, those are two big names.
Sure.
And I asked my buddy, I'm like, well, as we're walking in the movies, I'm like, what is this thing even about? And he's like, it's like a space thriller. And I'm like, I'm down for that. That sounds awesome. I would say like 10 minutes in the movie, I had a WTF moment going through my head. I'm like, Battlefield Earth is the film. Yeah. And it is literally one of the worst movies I've ever seen. My tickets were free, and I still wanted a refund as I walked out of the theater.
Yes, I'm familiar with this movie. I am very familiar with this film.
It's so terrible, man.
I've never seen it, but John Travolta, being a Scientologist, he made this movie. I think he was the one that bankrolled it, or I'm not to what extent he was involved in getting a bankroll, but he was the main guy that got it out there. It's L. Ron Hubbard. It's Scientology. It's one of his books, and he wanted to do it because of his religion and his ties to Scientology. And that's all I've ever heard, is that it's absolutely horrible.
And it lost. I did look it up, more out of morbid curiosity, and it lost $80 million.
Yeah. Well, come on. I mean, it's Scientology, and I'm not, going to rag on Scientology, although I think the last time we had brought up Scientology, to say go ahead and rag on it. It's not a real religion or whatever. you know, because I don't want to insult anybody, but as far as religions go, it's definitely at the bottom of my barrel of being a legitimate religion. And
It's
so
up there with Heaven's Gate.
well, I won't give them a pass. They're a little more legit than Heaven's Gate. But but one of the things about anything that deals with Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard's books is, I mean, he wrote a lot of science fiction.
Mm-hmm. That's what he cut his teeth on.
Yeah, and it's all terrible. He wasn't a good writer, but apparently he was a good second coming of Jesus or whatever, cult leader. I mean, he got John Travolta to do that. He's got Tom Cruise.
And he dragged Forrest Whitaker in. And in retrospect, for me, I think Forrest Whitaker is an amazing actor.
Absolutely,
generational talent type of stuff.
Amazing.
And the fact that he has that on his IMDb is a sin.
I think that, you know, like Nicolas Cage had talked about making the movie The Wicker Man. And he specifically had said that, you know, yeah, sometimes there's paydays involved. You know, you want to make money, you don't really care. So I'm assuming Whitaker got paid. I mean, Whitaker was in Bloodsport.
I did not recall that.
Yeah, he's in Bloodsport. But again, that was, you know.
That's got to be early in his career, because he was also, and we won't deviate too far from our path, but he was also one of my all-time favorite movies, Good Morning Vietnam.
Good Morning Vietnam, classic. Yeah. Speaking of Robin Williams, when he did RV, the movie RV, and it was the same time he had done 1 Hour Photo. And if you've ever seen 1 Hour Photo, I mean, it's a great film.
I haven't seen it.
Oh,
is it really worth it?
Oh, hell yeah! That movie is really good.
All right,
Robin Williams is
a
stalker kind of psychopath.
1 Hour Photo.
Yeah. Somebody had asked him in an interview about like doing these kinds of movies, which are way out of his wheelhouse. And he said, I loved the script. I wanted, you know, it was a challenging role. I really wanted to do it. And then he referenced RV and saying like, well, sometimes, you know, when the kids come up to you and they, you know, they want stuff and you're like, well, gotta go payday, go do RV, you know, big hit film for him. Right. Yeah. So he I think a lot of actors do that. And I'm sure Forrest Whitaker probably no different, you know.
Was it difficult for you as you were thinking of, you know, movie flops that had two major stars, or did you have to actually do some legwork? Because I had to actually start looking things up.
I knew 3 off the top of my head. But I didn't want to spend a bunch of time thinking about it. I have the internet, so I kind of did a little bit of mining, and I found a couple of other ones. One that I did know about, I just wasn't thinking about it. So I'm glad I stumbled across it. I'm like, oh yeah, that one. Oh god, that movie was bad, and that had a bunch of heavy hitters at the top of their game.
Ooh,
so
and
maybe I should jump into that one next. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna go with 1990 Bonfire of the Vanities with Tom Hanks, Bruce Willis, and Meg Griffith.
Wow, that is a
Melanie Griffith.
Melanie
Griffith. So 1990, Hanks is the biggest actor on the planet, at least becoming that. I don't know when he did Forrest Gump in Philadelphia, but it wasn't.
It's right about that time.
Yeah. And of course, Bruce Willis with Die Hard. I mean, like Bruce Willis was A-list as you could get, and Melanie Griffith was at the top of her game during that time period. And it was based on a Tom Wolfe book, and the book was massively, you know, successful. It's
he's a great writer.
Yeah, a classic piece. And the movie absolutely tanked. Now, I saw the movie when it first came out, so my recollection of the plot has to deal with it takes place like in the 1930s or 40s. It's a period piece. And one of the characters accidentally runs over like a black guy, and then there's a whole thing about whether or not they're going to go to the cops, and a journalist gets involved that's, you know, trying to figure out what happened, and of course people are trying to cover their asses, and it was terrible. The acting was horrid, and you consider like, well, how could the acting be so bad when you have Hanks and you have Willis and you have Melanie Griffith? What I learned from this movie, and I think this is when I first really started. Again, this is 1990, so at the time I'm like 15-ish, somewhere in 15 or 16, and it was the first time I really had thought about writing. You know, I was always a big book reader, and I was getting into writing. I was in a band, so I was writing songs. So I was in like, when you write something, what makes good writing? What makes bad writing? How do you adapt a classic book into a film? And realizing that just because you have good actors, that doesn't mean that they're going to be able to turn a bad script into something good, or a bad director into a good director. And yeah, that movie was it was a massive flop because they put it out there as going to be this
Oscar worthy type of deal.
Yeah, and it absolutely tanked.
Did it get a Razzie Award?
It probably did. Yeah, and I'm sure if you talk to Tom Hanks, he's probably not going to put that on his list of accomplishments. He'll stick to Philadelphia and Forrest Gump.
I know it. I'm familiar with the movie, but I never saw it.
Never saw it? I wouldn't recommend it unless you want to see a bad film. Some people like to watch bad movies, especially if it has actors that they really like. Like I want to see exactly how bad something is. Again, from a writing perspective, if I was a writer, or if I was somebody, well, I am a writer, but if I was somebody that was interested in the craft of writing and constructing stories, especially in the film industry, I think that these are movies that you could watch and see wow, I cannot believe that they did such a poor job. And I can go back to Envy. There were so many jokes that fell flat. And I was just this is not necessarily a bad joke, but the way it's constructed, the way it's delivered, how it fits into the plot just doesn't work. And I think a part of that is maybe lack of identity. Because when I first was watching Envy, my first thought was I think they're trying to make this kind of a black comedy. So kind of like a Beetlejuice, it has some really dark overtone. I mean, they kill a horse and they bury it in a swimming pool, in an empty swimming pool. And then eventually this horse gets dug up and because Ben Stiller's character offers a $50,000 reward. So now they're thinking we're going to dig up the horse, return the horse, get the reward. And it ends up the horse floating down a river. I'm going by memory. I don't know how it ended up in a river. So there's some really dark parts to it. But again, are you trying to be a black comedy, or are you trying to be a straight regular Jack Blackie, Ben Stiller, style? There's Something About Mary or Tropic Thunder, something like that, right?
Right.
I don't think they had an identity when they did that film.
Got it.
And I think Bonfire probably did something similar, where it was just I don't think they ever grabbed exactly what they were trying to do with this film in terms of what's the identity of this movie.
That's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair.
What's your next one?
So one of the most transformational movies that I ever saw was right about 2001-ish. And I still remember the very first part of the movie, the first Matrix, when Trinity jumped up in the air and the camera rotated all the way around her as she was doing that crazy kick. I was with my friends in the theater, we did that thing where hit each other on the shoulder, did you just see what happened? So I was a huge fan of all of the Matrix films. And when Matrix Resurrections was coming out, I was super excited. I'm well, this is going to be the final chapter in the story. It's going to be better than the very first one, because the script has got to be just absolutely killer. So Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss, and Neil Patrick Harris, Jada Pinkett. You got all big name actors. Probably one of the worst movies I've seen. And I'll tell you, in terms of how I rank movies, is Cookie and I will download things off of the Apple Store. I could download the Matrix collection. I want to say, I'm just going to use round numbers here. I don't remember what it was, but I could download the entire Matrix collection for $50, or I could download each video. So there's 4 of them individually. I decided to pay more because I didn't want Matrix Resurrections on my Apple TV.
You paid not to have it.
That's how much I disliked this movie. Absolutely awful. And that's I think that's a pretty extreme example of how much I dislike something that I paid not to have it on my person. And just out of curiosity, I was how much, we're talking with a lot of the production values of these films. I mean, it's huge money.
Oh yeah.
And I was so I just hopped on Wikipedia to see how much money this particular Matrix movie lost, and the low estimate was $130 million.
Wow.
That was the low estimate. That was not adjusted for inflation or anything like that. I just took the low end of the range, and I thought that was bananas.
That's insane loss, especially for a franchise that's so popular. You just think by the name alone that they would make money on it.
Well, and it's unfortunate because it's such I thought a great series, an awesome premise, and they not only did they put the final nail in the coffin, they threw a grenade in the coffin before they put the nail in. There's no coming back for that series. It's
right.
Done. You can't have any spin-offs or anything. They ended so badly that I think it wins all of the Razzie Awards.
That is impressive if you make a movie that's so bad that you destroy an iconic franchise. Like you can't move on from it. It's
Nope.
you put a grenade in the coffin and it just ended everything. It was just done. So my first thought was, I've never seen Matrix Resurrection. I saw the first Matrix. I liked it. I'd never watched any of the sequels.
What?
No, I haven't. So, I mean, again, we had this conversation about movies we haven't seen, and that, you know, if you go back to that episode and get the list of movies I haven't seen, it shouldn't surprise you that I haven't seen
That's true.
any of the Matrix movies beyond the first one.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
Leave a like on the video. I know you're enjoying this. Can you shut up?
The internet's answer to a question that was never asked. The Tilted Table with Sean and Joe.
Sequels typically don't do that well, or they're not usually revered as much as, you know, the original. And we were talking, but before we went on air, with the new Joker, which is, just getting absolutely destroyed,
Obliterated.
Yeah, and I don't know why they turned it into a musical. The first Joker is a really, really good film. It didn't need a sequel, but again, money, I guess, involved. Can they make a cash grab on it? But it's interesting that if they say, oh, we're going to make a sequel because it's a cash grab, but then you make something that can't grab any cash. So, like, I don't understand what you were aiming for.
Well, not you can grab any cash. And as I was doing the legwork for this episode, and I was on Wikipedia looking up, the biggest box office flops of all time, that movie that you're referring to is the biggest flop or box office bomb in the last 30 years.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say that I'm the biggest movie watcher, but if it's going to be a big title or movie of the year or culturally watershed moment or something, I'll watch it. And I remember just seeing the previews. I'm like, nope.
Yeah, when I first caught wind, because I didn't even know that they were making a sequel until it came out. Like, it may have been a day or two before it was released that I'm like, oh, they made a sequel to Joker, and it's a musical, and it's got Lady Gaga in it. And I'm just like,
no, it's Lady Gaga.
Oh, Lady Gaga.
Yeah.
Okay. My first thought was like, man, this is gonna fucking bomb so hard. What a stupid thing to do. But what do I know? I'm not a Hollywood producer. I may not know that much about filmmaking, but I do know that I wouldn't have made that film.
Well, I think, it's just one of those common sense things. If you were to sit down in your focus group and say, would you be interested in ... 100% of people are going to say, no. I'm not looking for a Batman character spin-off musical. It doesn't even matter what kind of music it is. I don't want to watch that.
It sounds like a horrible idea. It's kind of like, I think sometimes Hollywood, producers are so...
There's a lot of cocaine involved.
Yeah. I'm sure there's maybe some drugs involved. But the level of people, when you think about Hollywood producers, they live in such an isolated world, and I think they lack a lot of original ideas, just because original ideas are dangerous. We want a known product, right? A known franchise or a known entity that we can build on, whether that's remaking an old film or taking known characters and creating a new film. And that's what they did with Joker, right? Mm-hmm. They took a known quantity and made this great film perfect, right? And I think that I think sometimes when they're sitting in a room, I always use Alien versus Predator as the example. Like,
that's a good one.
How did this movie get made? And I swear, and of course I have no knowledge, but my feeling is there was these dudes sitting in a room going like, hey, I got an idea for a film. Well, what is it? Well, Alien, awesome. Big time franchise. Yeah. Predator, awesome, big time franchise. How about we put them together? That means it'll be twice as good because it's doubling up.
It probably went down exactly as you're outlining.
I have no doubt it did.
Yep.
Yeah, and so you get movies like that, and then you wonder why, like, the fans of this, especially the beloved franchises. And Alien's got a huge following, and Predator has a huge following, and I don't know what people who are really into those franchises think of that film. I think there may have been more than one. I felt like there might have been more than one. I think
so.
Yeah, I would assume they were looking at it going like, thank you for destroying something that we cherish and love.
Well, and then we can jump into your next movie, but for whatever movie producer is out there listening to this, the movie that absolutely must be made is Rambo versus Terminator.
Oh no!
I'm telling you, man. Think of how many bullets would be fired and rockets in this movie.
I just think that what's really bothering me is this is a possibility. As Hollywood starts to disintegrate further and further into irrelevancy, I know there's somebody in a room right now that's going, Rambo? Terminator?
At the same time, in the same place?
What could go wrong?
Uh-huh.
That's money. There's no way this can fail.
At all.
Yeah. And we will
all I
see
hear
that.
is a cash register.
Yeah. All right, so the next movie I have is actually a relatively unknown film, and that's because it was bad, partly because it was bad. It was an independent film, so I don't think a major studio backed this, so I don't know how much that plays into it. This was one of the reasons why I didn't want to fuck with sequels too much, because people are like, well, it was a bomb. Sequels don't do, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I don't know where an independent film falls into this, but this was a very, very successful Broadway play, and this is 1998. This movie comes out, so we got Sean Penn, Kevin Spacey, Meg Ryan, Chaz Palminteri.
Who's that?
Okay, well, then let me remove his name then. I think he's a great actor. Robin Wright Penn is in it, so it was Robin Wright Penn. I don't think she was married to Sean Penn at this time, but she was an up-and-coming actress. But obviously, it's going to be Penn, Spacey, and Meg Ryan in this role. The movie's called Hurly Burly. And
never heard of it.
Yeah, and you had some heavy hitters. And this is late '90s. All of these guys,
and it's
actors.
a musical.
It's not a music. No. It's just an independent film.
Okay.
Again, it was a stage play, super successful stage play on Broadway for a long time, and they turned it into a film. And the plot. And I saw this movie probably a year or two after it came out. And being an independent film, it's just basically about, I think Penn plays this like Hollywood producer. He's got a cocaine problem. All the other characters are kind of these sort of minor actors that are, doing movies here and there. And it's one of those it's a movie about a guy struggling with his purpose in life as he dives deeper into, the Hollywood scene and doing cocaine and things like that. I know that at one point, I think it's Kevin Spacey. He moves in. He's a friend of Sean Penn's character, and that guy has his own issues, and it's just one of those films. I guess I would describe it. It's just basically a kind of a dialogue-driven drama, and it sucks. Sean Penn's terrible in it. Kevin Spacey, who I rarely have ever seen him do anything I didn't think that was really, really good. He's just such a phenomenal actor. He's plastic as hell in this movie.
Okay.
Meg Ryan plays kind of a stripper, coked out chick. It doesn't work for her because at this point she was, when Harry Met Sally, she was, Sleepless in Seattle. And what was the other one she did with Tom Hanks? You've Got Mail, right?
You've Got Mail.
So she always was the sort of like really pretty girl next door type. And yeah, her character, she doesn't do a good job. I'm not saying she's not capable of acting this character. I think again, it goes to the writing and the directing. It didn't work, and it's terrible. And I watched it twice because I couldn't.
Like a masochist?
Well, no, because I couldn't believe it was that bad. So you watched it as bad years and years later. Maybe 4 or 5 years later, when I was living in San Francisco, I was telling my friend Rob about it. And again, we're very much into those independent films. And I think that's why I watched it again. I'm like, it has to be good because it's not like a big Hollywood production. It's, these are people about their craft, right? They're, they're going to sit down and they're going to make this great, just independent underground movie, kind of like a 1 hour photo with Robin Williams. No, it was bad the second time around. It was terrible. So Hurly Burly, do not watch it, especially if you're a fan of Kevin Spacey or Sean Penn. Yeah, it'll erode your feelings about those cats.
That's a good way of putting it. Eroding your feelings.
Yeah.
Well, here's one. Came out in 2020. Wonder Woman 1984. So, but again, the point of our episode is movies with big names. And not just big names, but even bigger budgets. And this film, was huge as far as they spent $200 million making this movie, and they ended up losing over $160 million.
So the actress, is that
Gal Gadot?
Gal Gadot. Yeah. Okay.
And then Kirsten Wiig, Chris Pine. You got a lot of big name actors in there. I remember Cookie and I sitting down and watching it, and I had high hopes. We had ordered dinner. It was like a Friday date night, and I was like, hey, new action movies coming out. I'm sure they got some crazy special effects. I did not anticipate it to just be, 2 hours long. There's another kind of side comment on these action movies. I don't understand why we need 3 hour movies. Have you noticed that? Like, just in the last couple of years, movies keep getting longer and longer and longer. I don't think it adds to the storytelling. It can be, you can tell a great story in a certain period of time.
Yeah, well, the target is usually 90 minutes. That's the Hollywood ideal. All that ideal may have changed over the years. Maybe they are looking more at longer films. I know that films often get hit because they lack the time to, to really flesh out the story, especially if it's like based on a book. The other people criticize it. Oh man, the book is so much better and they left all this, whatever. So maybe that's why they're doing it. I honestly don't know why movies are getting longer. I first thought it's always about money. And I know back in the day, obviously prior to digital, cameras and stuff like that, they were using 35 millimeter film, which is ridiculously expensive. Mm-hmm. So it may have been a financial move to not make movies longer than 90 minutes. People get used to that time frame. So if you do make something longer, you might lose the audience because now it's going on too long. But times have changed. You can make movies.
A 2-hour movies is totally fine, like Gladiator and all that. Like or Titanic, like that's fine.
Yeah.
But when you're tipping that 3-hour mark, it's like I'm not trying to sign off on the half of my day to watch this film.
Yeah.
I digress. Wonder Woman 1984 was terrible. And what's amazing is if you're investing in a movie and you have $1 dollars that you're putting into something, does nobody pay attention and actually watch it or provide some type of honest feedback? It's kind of shocking to me that movies will hit the market and then people are surprised that it bombs.
Right.
Of all of the checks and balances along the way, it's like nobody did their job.
Yeah, I've never seen the film. I'm not a big superhero Marvel.
Do you want me to airdrop you a copy?
No, I don't want to see it. No, I don't. Wonder Woman to me has also been one of the few superheroes I have had very little interest in. Growing up, I watched, the Wonder Woman, Linda Carter, and I thought it was okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but she has the truth rope, and
she had the imaginary or the invisible airplane.
Yeah, but you could see her. How is that effective? Because you could see her still. She's just floating in the air like she's sitting in a cockpit.
It's like an invisible lazy boy.
It's just a stupid, and I get it. Look, there's a lack of female superheroes in general, especially when you go back, to the early days of Marvel and DC Comics. And so she's iconic because she was, one of the first really popular female superheroes. So, and I don't think she's a bad superhero. Just, first of all, I'm not big into that stuff anyways. And she's the least interesting of something I'm not that interested in to begin with.
That's all, yeah, that's fair across the board.
I don't know if Wonder Woman 1984 is the first Wonder Woman movie they made.
I don't think so.
Okay, so there was one before that, right?
Yeah.
And I remember seeing the trailer where she's on the island that she grew up on, and it looked very Gladiator to me. And I thought that was pretty cool. I'm like, oh, that'd be interesting. I actually would be more interested in seeing more of the backstory. Before she became Wonder Woman.
Yeah, I'm not totally familiar with that particular canon, but
yeah, I just know that she comes from some island that of Amazonian women, basically. And I guess I'm assuming it's like Superman, like all the women on that island are like badasses like her. She just happened to be the one that got off the island or whatever. So yeah, I'm not interested in Wonder Woman 1984. Not for 3 hours. Fuck that. Stupid film.
Yep.
My next film is a movie called All About Steve. So this is 2000.
Where do you come up with these, man? I haven't heard of any of these.
Well, I was pushed to see this film by a woman I was dating when it first came out. It has Sandra Bullock and Bradley Cooper. So this is, Miss Congeniality. Sandra Bullock was, pretty much one of the bigger female stars. Cooper was just coming off The Hangover, one of the bigger male stars. And it's a romantic comedy. So just to be clear, I'm not a big rom-com guy. So this isn't my wheelhouse. So my personal feelings about this film probably don't matter a whole lot because I think it's a generic kind of rom-com. And it's probably why it failed so badly, that it just didn't work. And most people have never heard of this film.
I've never heard It's All About Steve.
So when it came out, I was dating this girl, April. And she's like, oh, let's go see this movie. And I remember thinking, like, well, I love Sandra Bullock. I think she's amazing. And Bradley Cooper did a great job in The Hangover. And I'm like, it's a rom-com, but, how could you fuck up a romantic comedy? It's a kind of a standard formula. It had a fairly interesting plot where Sandra Bullock plays a crossword puzzle writer for the Sacramento paper. And she meets this guy, and I'm going to hold the details, but there's a back and forth. And she eventually creates a crossword series in her paper called All About Steve. And it's just, again, that sort of typical rom-com style stuff. And I saw it in the theater.
How'd the date go?
It went fine. Yeah, she moved to Canada and married some guy, so it went great. It's funny, I still talk to her today. She's an awesome person. We're friends on social media. But anyways, so the movie comes out in the theater. We go see it. It's opening night, and it's like half full. There's nobody there. And this is a Friday night. In San Francisco, you figure a rom-com, there's going to be people on dates. Mm-hmm. Nobody's there. Well, I'd say it was less than half full. By the next week, this movie wasn't even being played, at least not in San Francisco.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was gone pretty quick.
That's like a flash in the pan.
Yeah. And I think from my memory, the biggest problem with this movie is there was zero chemistry between Bullock and Cooper. And I felt like, I'm going by memory, I felt like they literally just pulled two major stars, shove them together.
And said, do the thing.
And do this movie. And I don't know how much time they actually spent together. Like, I'm not saying you need to spend time with your co-stars to create some kind of chemistry. Good actors can pull it off. It doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. But their interactions in this movie made me think that these people were literally reading off a piece of paper and didn't know each other. Even though I'm watching a movie where they're having interactions, it seemed like every scene was like, did you just meet him right now? Did you just meet her right now? Like, do you guys even know each other? It's a terrible film.
That's crazy. Well,
you want me to airdrop that to you?
Yeah, we should make it like a marathon deal. It's funny. I only watch these types of things. Like if I have the flu or I'm stuck in bed or something, then I don't really care if I'm paying attention or not. Then I'll throw on something that I'm indifferent towards. So yeah, I might watch It's All About Steve. Who knows? Mm-mm. I'll give you my feedback and then charge you for my time that it took.
Right. Well, I mean, if you're gonna watch a rom-com, at least I would say go with When Harry Met Sally. You want to see a good one. That's a pretty damn good one. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, those are great ones, man. As I did my own rehash, Battlefield Earth, that's the all-time worst movie in my entire lifetime.
Yeah, and you brought it up on a previous podcast.
It made a big impression.
Yeah, that's amazing. The movie can be so bad that it follows your brain just as much as like a great film. Like whatever your favorite film is, you remember that front to back, and you remember everything about Battlefield Earth.
Well, and one of the other things I remember about it was in the main. This is again right when this movie theater opened. It's in the main auditorium, like Cinema One. Oh, yeah. There's like 700 people or something in there. I don't know the exact number, but I just remember as I'm sitting there watching the film, watching all of these people walk out of the movie.
I mean, don't put anything past Scientology to shove their religion down your throat. They have money. That's why this thing's in the theater.
And that's probably why they gave away all the tickets.
They still haven't learned.
But literally, that's the only movie in my life that I've ever seen that, it was a packed theater. And then once the credits came up on the screen, the movie theater was 20% full.
Yeah, I don't even have to turn on the lights because there's nobody. You're not going to trip over anybody on the way out.
Nope, everybody's already gone. Yeah. Well, what a great idea, man. I'm really glad you came up with this box office bombs with megastars.
Oh, yeah. It's interesting. And I mean, we're just cracking the tip of the iceberg. Again, you do some research. You can find some films. And a lot of them are, again, they're obscure because I think Hollywood tries to bury these things pretty quick. Mm-hmm. And the actors probably want that as well because it's like, I'm on a string of hits, right? And I do this film that's really, really bad. Well, and by all metrics, it should have done bad because I got all these, I got another megastar. It's designed to succeed. And now the next movie I audition for or my name comes up, they're going to go like, yeah, man, did you see that last film that he or she was in? I don't know.
It's like the Schwarzenegger in Last Action Hero.
Yeah.
Like that deal. Or Stallone, Stop or My Mom Will Shoot.
Yeah, that's considered a classic flop. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
I think that's in the pantheon of flops. That's in the top 10.
Yeah. There's an interesting story about Schwarzenegger and Stallone with Stop or My Mom Will Shoot.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Stallone just put something up on social media not too long ago where I guess Schwarzenegger had made a comment basically saying that he had turned down that film and Stallone had picked it up. And so it was like, haha, you did the bad film, I didn't, or something like that. It was that kind of thing.
Well, I think Stallone still has acting chops, and right now we're in the middle of watching Tulsa King. Yeah,
Tulsa King.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Love that show.
I haven't seen it, but I want to watch it.
Oh, definitely have that on.
Yeah, you airdrop. Why don't you airdrop me that?
I'll give you the whole season.
Yes, please do.
I have an important announcement for you, so stay tuned.
Yo, that's some next level shit, bruh.
So you got me. Big deal.
The internet's answer to a question no one asked. The Tilted Table with Sean and Joe.
And another episode slam dunked into the bag. Episode 20. It's awesome.
It's like Dominique Wilkins and the Tomahawk Jam, man.
Right? So now what are we going to do? We're going to go watch some more films, some bad ones.
Yeah, shout out Brandon.
All right, folks. I am Sean Landon Clark.
And I'm Joey Joe, the Fracky Mac.
We're out of here.
Peace.